So what I'm assuming now is that you've been doing open houses and you've met buyers. You've been talking to the people you know and you've met buyers. By the way, one of the advantages of having a listing is that I've been advertising it, and I keep getting people to register on my website, sometimes giving me their phone numbers and email addresses and setting up searches for properties. I've got maybe 8 or 9 since the last 2 weeks. This tomorrow, and I'm going to send everybody an email in a little while. Oh my God. But tomorrow at 2 o'clock in San Carlos, I'm doing a class on eEdge, but I'm also going to be broadcasting it and recording it. And when I have a free minute today, I'm going to send everybody an email with my open house one and all that sort of stuff, which would be a good thing to go through. But so I'm assuming that somebody wants to buy a house, right? And we're going to talk about how to make an offer. Doesn't that sound like fun? Get your head into the game. Offer, there's a definition, I guess, here, is the process of moving from a buyer or seller agreement into a sales contract. What I like the most are people that call me up with questions about how to write up an offer. Right? I'm just saying, of all the coaching that I do, and the only thing I like more about that is when they call me and say, we're closing next week, what should I be doing? Right? I like that even more. But how to write an offer. Some of you are old hands at it now, so I can call on. All right. Writing the offer is an exciting and rewarding time for you and your client. Sometimes that's true. If you represent the buyer, your search is paid off and they found their new home. Let's hope. If you represent the seller, good times, right? So it says here, this is the point where for the first time the buyer and the seller are coming together. And on Thursdays, what? Nothing. Is there a question?
No.
Does she's got shoes or something she's looking for? I'm just, she's very ambitious. So, Pinterest, everybody knows what Pinterest is. Pinterest is for women what fantasy football is for men. Isn't that some of you get that joke.
Great analogy.
Anyhow, so here we are. Contracts are getting close to payday. Make it happen. So buyer makes an offer. It says here there are 3 ways in which it can be responded to. When I represent the seller, what I usually say is you have 2 choices. You can either accept or reject the offer. I know it says 3, right? But you have 2 choices. And every once in a while somebody will say to me, well, don't I really have a 3rd choice? Can't we counter the offer? Countering the offer is a rejection, right? Once you've countered it, you've rejected it. It's dead and can't be revived, right? And I've had people that I'm coaching where the owner decided to counter what was a reasonable and good offer, and the buyer rejected the counter offer. The owner then went back to the original price, and they said, no, forget it, we're going to buy something else. They went and bought something else. So I'm just saying. But they could counter, but counter is a rejection, right? If we accept the offer, we're beginning the process. Representing the buyer, prepare to write the offer. So what should you do if you have a buyer for my listing on Dearborn? What would you do?
Call you.
Call me. Yeah, call me. And I would say start with the price $750. No. So let's pick a different one. How about there's a listing on what was the one in Cupertino that we were holding open this weekend? Supposing you have a listing on somebody else's, you have an offer on somebody else's listing. I was just hoping you would have an offer on mine, but that's, what's the first thing you ought to do? Make sure they have financing. What does that look like? A letter. What kind of a letter? What? Pre-approval letter. What should be in the pre-approval letter?
The amount that they're approved up to, and it'd be nice if it said it was underwritten. I had been to the underwriters.
It would be, that was a fairly good answer. It would be nice if it had already been submitted to an underwriter. And by the way, if it's been submitted to an underwriter, we can click the box that says no loan contingency. Would that make the offer stronger? If I'm this listing agent and I'm representing a seller and there's two offers, and they're the same amount of money, and one of them has a loan contingency and the other one doesn't have a loan contingency, which one are we going to accept? Same price. No contingency. How much higher would we have a loan contingency offer have to be before we accept it over the known loan contingency offer? How much higher would it have to be?
Thousands, tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands of, a lot more. So by going to the wrong lender, can it cost the buyer tens of thousands of dollars? And perhaps mean they don't even get their offer accepted, even if it's significantly higher. Biggest spread I ever had was $80,000. Where there was an offer that had a loan contingency and it was $80,000 more than the second offer, which was no loan contingency, and they went with the second offer. They didn't counter, they just said, we're getting more money than we ever thought we were ever gonna get. We don't want it to fall apart. Take that one, right? So that's a good thing. Should it say the amount of the offer price? Should it say at least that amount? If you're offering $950,000, should your letter say $950,000? Should it say $875,000? We're offering $950,000. Should your letter say $875,000? Say no. Say no. It should say what the best scenario would be that the lender wrote you one for that offer and has that price. If it says more, do you understand there's two ways to look at that? So the offer is $950,000 and you have a letter that says you can afford $1 million. There's two ways to look at that. Number one, I know I could counter you and you could still buy the house, right? And now you might think if you represent the buyer, that's a bad thing. But let's say you really want to buy the house. Would your buyer want a counter? Or would no, let's say I have 5 offers. Does your buyer want to be included in a multiple counter offer? Probably. And if your letter said you could afford more, is it more likely that I would counter you rather than just push your offer to the side and say we're not going to look at that one? Right? Do you understand? It cuts both ways. If your letter says the amount of the offer, then there might be an assumption that that's all you can afford. Right? Yeah.
If you know they're gonna put 20% down, you know they have 20% cash on hand somewhere, then if your pre-approval letter is just saying 80%, is that okay?
Yeah. If
you know they have 20% cash already just stashed in the bank, and the pre-approval letter.
The pre-approval letter should say they're approved to buy a home of this amount. It also should say that they verified the down payment, the assets. It would be better if it said that they've gone through underwriting. It would be good if it gave an interest rate. How many of you have had written an offer and not known what interest rate to put in? We're surprised that the paragraph actually asks for an interest rate. And the letter from the lender does not mention interest rates. Right? And then you have to call the lender and find out. So we want a strong letter. What else should we do? So this is all before you write an offer. Yes.
So you want it to say the actual.
There's two
offer
ways to
amount,
look
or
at it. I generally would, I didn't trip if it said more.
do you find that they would probably ask for more if it said more?
Well, that's the question, but then if we're in a competitive environment and we wanna be included in a multiple counteroffer, see, would it matter our strategy if the house has been on the market for 45 days and the listing agent said, oh, that one, no, I don't have any other offers? Would our strategy be different than if we're taking offers? There's one of the properties we're taking in San Mateo, we're helping an agent write an offer, they're taking the offers today at 3. We think there's 10 offers. Right? Would our strategy be different?
Yeah.
What does this presume? What? What does it presume? What I just said about 10 offers on the property where the offers are due at 3 today, what does that presume that I've done? It means I've talked to the listing agent, right? To find out how many offers are there, how many disclosure packages do you have out? What is it that the seller is looking for? Tell me, how does the seller want to see the offer written up? Do they need time to rent back? What do they want? What will make them happy? I used to ask them, tell me what would make the seller happy? And what? Right? Does everybody understand that you should call the listing agent? What's one of the other things you would like to verify? It's still on the market. Now, you might think that just because an offer's been accepted, the listing agent has changed the MLS. I'll tell you, as a listing agent, that's not my first thought when an offer's been accepted. My first thought isn't, let me go to the MLS, hurry up, change the status, just so I don't waste any other agent's time, right? I just have to, that is not my first thought, right? Right, eventually, I'm gonna say, oh, after you call me and say, is it still available? Then I'm gonna go, oh, I forgot to change it on the MLS. Right, and by the way, I have still got, do you wanna write up offers on homes that are no longer active?
No.
Probably not. So you wanna make sure, is it still available? Right, these are the questions, is it still available? Do you have any offers in hand? Do you have any offers? If the agent says yes, what should you ask?
Oh, how much?
How many? How much? How do they look? I would tell you. They don't, some don't. I would say. Paragraph 3 of the residential listing agreement, about a quarter of the way down, says the listing agent is authorized by the seller to disclose the number of and amount of any offers received. That's what it says. The idea, many real estate agents don't know what they're talking about. They've learned real estate on the streets, right? You know, some of you have heard my metaphor. Real estate's like child abuse. It gets passed from one generation to another. Bad habits, bad information. So the listing agent may say it's illegal, unethical, or immoral for me to tell you what the amount of the other offers are. Don't debate them. Don't say, well, my count, my Gimlin says that, you know, right, you know, hey, stupid, haven't you read the listing agreement, right? You know,
Paragraph 3.
right,
There you go.
right, you know. By the way, I've called people up and started this conversation, and the agent on the other line remembered that I was the one who taught them real estate in the first place, right? And at that point, I said, I felt more comfortable pointing out to them that they probably never read the listing agreement, right? But they're just saying what other agents have said. Some agents are gonna tell you, I would tell you, if I would say, hey, I'm not gonna tell you if they're lower, right? If you called me up on Dearborn and asked me, what will the seller take? I would say, well, I'm not sure, but I think they might take $698,888. Not sure, but by the way, that's the list price, right? But I would start, that's what I would say. But if I had an offer for $715 and you called me up and said, do you have any offers? I'd say yes. and you say, how much are they? I would say the top one's $715. Right? How am I hurting my client by doing this? Because if you're not going to offer, have I increased the likelihood that you're going to offer more than $715?
Yes.
Right.
If you know that the house was competitively priced low to generate overbidding, then would you tell them frankly that it's gonna
Well,
take?
no, if I knew that they were expecting $100,000 over, I would tell them that. But if you're asking me what offers do I have, I would give you the top of I would want you to beat it. Because by the way, if I got 4 offers around the 715 range, we're gonna counter all of them and add a couple of grand, right? So I'd like as many people in that party as possible. All right, so we want to know, we want all of our financing straightened out, we want the letter, we need verification of down payment. All right, this is on page 2, which we're going to talk about this Thursday of the residential purchase agreement. The top of page 2 is a down payment, and there's a box, verification of down payment. What would that look like? What? Bank statements. You should black out their account number. Just saying. Stocks, which could change every 15 minutes. And could it be in the letter that the lender wrote? Could the lender say, I have verified their down payment?
Yes.
Sometimes the lender says assets. That's all they say. As a listing agent, I'm not entirely sure what that means. Does that mean they verified their down payment? I don't know. It might mean that. Would I feel better as a listing agent if the letter actually said, we have verified their down payment? Would that make me feel better?
Yes.
Right, all right. So, there's a checklist. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval letter, produce a CMA, a competitive market analysis. What's a good way to do that? What? RPR. Does RPR have a report designed for a buyer writing an offer? The answer is yes. Since it's called the property report. Could we also just use the MLS? Right, by running everything that's happened recently. And does everybody know how to run a quick CMA? No. Does anybody know what a quick CMA is? No. So, I'm not gonna pick my listing because I don't. So does anybody know of a property that's on the market besides mine? So let's pick one of these, 417, let's pick one, right? These are vacant listings, we're just gonna pick on one. It doesn't really wanna show me 417. How about Via Corta? It's only 4 million, I don't know, I want something a little more. So I'm gonna do this, and here's one, Radco, I know that place. A beautiful house. In the Santa Teresa area, it's in, so here we go, Radco Drive 95119, Santa Teresa. Beautiful home. Alright, so I've copied it, and I'm gonna look, it's a 4.3, 2256 square feet. It's got 0.14 of an acre, 6,000 square feet, and it's 42 years old. All right, so what I would do, one thing we could do is open it in a new tab. By the way, what I do a lot is I right-click on the mouse and open in a new tab, because if we just click on search, we're going to lose this property. So we're going to click on this, and I would run all of these. And this is a single family home. How many bedrooms did it have? 4, 2, and and it was 22 something. I'm gonna say 1,800 square feet to 2,600 square feet. I'm just sort of making it up. And the age was 42. So let's say 35 to 52, I don't know. And so notice, there are active pending, and what I would do is, I'm gonna go here to map search. Now, one thing I could do is just take the zip code 95119. And then I'm gonna go here to change date and 0 minus 90. Hope I didn't do that, I've been doing this a lot lately. 0 minus 90, there are 6 matches in that zip code that are 4 bedrooms and 2 baths that are roughly that square footage, that are roughly that age. Right? And if I click on results, here they are, and they range from 805 to 905. One of them is this one. So by clicking on that, 898, by clicking on that, what I'm going to do is go to refine, and I'm going to click on discard, because I don't want to include the one I'm doing. I'm going to click on that box up there, so I've highlighted all of them, go to actions, and do what's called a quick CMA. And by the way, you can just run the whole zip code for the last 90 days, but what this is going to tell us is, on average, the sold properties have been getting $424.94 a square foot. Right, is that right? 424? Let's say 425 will be generous. So I might look at Radco, which is 2256, and I might just do 2256 times 425, 958,000 is what you get straight lining that. So that's a lot more than what this is listed for. So it would help to actually look at some of these. Now, if I look at this quick CMA, you'll notice that the range is all over the place. But 421, 412 is like the lowest dollars per square foot. And there's something wrong with Radco. Right?
It seems that way.
Sold as well?
I did the last 90 days.
Oh, that's right.
Something is wrong with Radco, right? Because at 412, what is it? 2256. I always pick something crazy. I don't know. 2256 times 412, which is the least, you get 929. So Radco is on the market for a lot less per square foot. Beautiful Century Oaks and the Rancho, 4 bedrooms. I don't know what's wrong with Radco, but something is wrong with Radco. Right? Something is wrong. So, by the way, would it be more valuable if you'd actually seen the other properties that we're doing on the CMA?
Yeah.
Right? This is why specializing in an area sometimes can be an advantage, so that you have an idea. So there's something wrong with Radco. That's all I can say, because it's obviously.
Maybe it's priced to sell,
Yeah, well, how long has Radco been on the
the
market?
20th.
It's been on the market 17 days. And its dollars per square foot are significantly less.
That's not normal.
Not normal, something is wrong. By the way, we went on a listing appointment last night, sort of a almost listing appointment, and didn't take the CMA. You know, it's just a bit, I just had this for the area, and I could talk to a seller from a quick CMA as to what their house ought to be priced at. Because, I'll give you an example. Let's go back here. We're gonna go back to criteria. And one of the other things I sometimes would do is I would just get rid of, how about 3 plus, 2 plus, how many, we're down to 11. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm gonna get rid of that. And we're now down to 28. And we do the results. And we click on that box to highlight all of them. Click on all to highlight all of them. A quick CMA. And if you print it out, it's going to print out a little line on each of the properties, which is kind of long. Now we have 474 is what people on average are getting in that zip code. Radco is priced way below 474 a square foot. Something is wrong with Radco. Is it true that given condition and area, people get so many dollars per square foot? And by the way, that's what the property report is going to do in RPR. It just takes a look at what's sold recently and figured out what they're selling by dollars per square foot and multiply it out. Right, that's all that it does. All right. I can see you're all over. That worked out beautifully, didn't it? If we copy that and we go to the home page and we go to RPR and it's going to pop up. It never goes away no matter what you do. We find Radco. And it says $898 is the list price. It thinks RVM means the realtor's valuation model is $880. So this seems to know more than what, a lot of times the vacant ones, something has happened to them. I don't know. And so if we go to create a report, this is what you could do. See, the property report is the one that I would typically use for a buyer. And if we just run the report, it's going to just give us what it thinks are comps, but the computer doesn't know either. The computer hasn't looked at any of them. Right? Do you understand why previewing properties is a valuable thing for you to do? Because once they sell and become comps, you can't see them again unless you are good at breaking and entering. Right? You put on your ninja outfit and you scaled the fence. Right? You understand? You can't get back inside them. Once, by the way, in my farm, there was one that sold and I didn't have a chance to look at it, and I actually went and knocked on the door for the new owner and asked them if they could show me the house, and they said, oh, all right. But you understand, you can't see it afterwards. So by previewing homes when they close, would it help if you had seen some of the other homes in that neighborhood? Right? Would that make your advice as to what?
Is that where you get the school reports as well, or?
You can get school reports here too. Notice it says school report, which is sort of you have to select a school. So basically you have to figure out what schools
Before.
Radco is in, and then you can get a report. It's a very nice looking report that tells you everything about those schools. Right? And you have to look in the MLS. So produce a comparative market analysis, a CMA. But does everybody understand this is not as easy? Everybody that's been calling me saying, can you help me do a, they always give me one where there are no comps. There's nothing like it. Nothing is sold. Right? It isn't a cookie cutter house. Right? And so, I don't know. Right? By the way, one of the things that I sometimes do is I go back, I was doing this last night. When did they buy the house? All right, let's say they bought the house 5 or 10 years ago. Can we find out what the median and average price home was in 95119 7 years ago? The answer is yes. You go to statistics and it'll go back, keep going back till you find the month and year that they bought their house. Can the statistics tell us how much values have gone up since they bought their house? Right? This is just sort of a common sense reality check. Right, because if people are saying they want 50% more than what they paid, and the market has only gone up 25%, they better have done something nice to the house, right? All right, what else should we, so we should produce a comparative market analysis, shouldn't we? What I used to tell buyers was, if we have an appraisal contingency, you cannot overpay. Did you know that? You can't overpay if there's an appraisal contingency, because it's either going to appraise or it's not going to appraise. If it does appraise, you have a third-party neutral expert who has verified that the house is worth this much. If it doesn't appraise, you don't have to buy it. Does everybody get that? By the way, if there's if there's 10 offers
and yours has an appraisal contingency, and somebody else's does not, you're not gonna get the house. So again, we're back to how many offers have been made, how long has it been on the market? All right, review the tax records. What is that? Where would we find that? So my starting point, by the way, whenever I'm doing this, is I take the address of the property and I go to Realist. In the old days, this used to be called the property profile. If you called your friendly title rep up, has everyone met a friendly title rep?
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Hillary, why don't you say hello? This is Hillary Norman with USA Title.
She has a great app.
A great app and a friendly title rep. How many of you met? How many of you have met an unfriendly title rep? I actually have had agents say to me, "How do I meet a title rep?" I say, "Sit in that couch and wait. Just sit there, watch TV, wait, and you will meet a title rep." That's all you have to do. So I popped in and it has, this is tax information. This is called Realist. And it gives me, by the way, CoreFact will tell me they think it's worth 905. Right? And their confidence score is 73% at 905, which is a different. And then here's another range of 7.6. That's a big range. But this gives you all this kind of information, including when they bought it themselves, when they bought it last. And by the way, if you're interested, it has comparables, which it's just drawing automatically. It's got market trends. I'm not going to go through all these. If you want to know who the neighbors are, you can find that out. Neighborhood profile, which is median income, age, and stuff like that. You got stuff, right? Does everybody agree? Stuff and more stuff. So ensure that the property is still available. Yeah. Build rapport, gather as much information about the seller and the property, ask questions to discover what's important to the seller, inquire about activity. If there's disclosure statements, you should get a copy of them and give them to the buyer and have the buyer read them, and you should read them too. If you make an offer and you've received termite and property and chimney and roof and all this other kind of stuff, the law assumes that your offer is included with whatever's mentioned in those reports. So the property inspection contingency, which is I believe paragraph 14, I think so, something like that, or 10. The property inspection contingency is for things that you've discovered after you're in contract, not things you knew about when you made the offer. So if the termite report says there's $30,000 of section 1 work that needs to be done, your buyer can't then say, "I'm not going to buy the house because I now read the termite report and there's $30,000 worth of work." Not if they got a copy of it before they made the offer. All right, do you understand? Somebody needs to read these things. Right? They need to read these things. Homeowner association, helping somebody write an offer, which I would like to do more of. Did I mention that? Helping people write an offer. And the homeowner association documents say that you can't rent it out if there's a certain percentage of units that are already rented out. Does everybody understand? A lot of homeowner associations have a rule that say you can't rent it out for a year. Right? Or if there's too many rentals, you can't rent it out, because if there's too many rentals, it lowers the value of the units, and some lenders will make loans on them. Right? Should you have that conversation with your clients that are buying in a homeowner association, a common interest development, especially if they're planning on renting it out? So the agent was thinking of telling them that they probably don't pay that close of attention, and maybe they could rent it out anyhow and no one will know. And my reaction, you can't give that advice. Right? The advice you should give is you need to assume that if you try to rent it out, you're going to be caught and stopped. But do you still want to buy the house? Does everybody, right? So we want to read these, find out if there's other offers. Write the offer.
Now, I've already gone through, aren't we going through that on Thursdays? Aren't we going through that? We've covered a lot of this, humanize the offer. Have a letter, a video. If there are kids, there's no reason to play fair. If they have children, have the children write little notes to the seller about how much they like it. Right? There's no reason. Right? Do you think that motivates some people? Right? If the people have really love their home, and you'd say, yeah, it's a young tech couple, and they're probably going to rip out that wall, and they're going to tear down all that, and they're going to rip out that. Right? Is this what they want to hear? No. That's not what they want to hear. Right? No, that's not what they want to hear. Right? Would they like a nice family to move into their home? They like that, right? You see, it's not always about the money. Create a buying loop and offer document. Does everybody know how to use SkySlope? How many of you don't know what SkySlope is? All right, so not all Keller Williams offices, but many Keller Williams offices use SkySlope. I can name two of them. One of them is Keller Williams Silicon City, and the other one is Keller Williams San Carlos. Just thought I'd share that with you guys. Right? They both use SkySlope. And SkySlope is a system for writing offer. It doesn't write the offer, but it's for electronic signatures. Although I'm efficient, and I often use Digital Ink, not DocuSign, Digital Ink, which is built into the CAR system, just because I don't want to make a PDF and then upload the PDF and then put in signature blocks in the PDF. Do you understand how much work does that sound? Does that sound like a lot of work? Right, so in Digital Ink, I can just let people sign it and send it to them. And I've heard for decades, I'm not kidding, I've heard all the reasons why DocuSign is better and this one is better and Digital Ink is terrible. I've heard all that, but it seems to work, right? And it's already built into the system and I don't have to do it. But once everything is signed, I need to go into SkySlope and upload the documents and checklists. And people are going to look at them at both offices, right? Isn't that true, Roberta? Does somebody look at them? Right? And you're going to see there's some information you're supposed to have, right? But we use the same system at the two offices. So how would you learn how to use SkySlope?
Video.
Ask Mike. Type in Google
How to use SKYSLOPE. How to use SkySlope. How about that? Now, every once in a while they have webinars at the different offices. Here are some small tutorials. If you want to watch a video and you click on videos, you're going to see a bunch of different videos of different lengths. If you really would like to know how to use SkySlope, here's SkySlope Basic Training, January 13th, 2016. It is a 50-some minute video, right? I told Laura that she needed to make a 3-minute video that explained everything you needed to know about SkySlope in three minutes, because then agents would watch it. But you probably can't do that in 3 minutes, right? So did they break them down over here? SkySlope for brokers and agents, SkySlope training by Remax. Who cares who did it? By the way, you're going to find, if you do the search, that Keller Williams offices use SkySlope. And if you'd like to see a Keller Williams webinar on how to use SkySlope, you can do that too. So if we go back here, and we go up here and we're going to how to use SkySlope and type in Keller Williams. Guess what you're going to find? SkySlopes, this one is with Keller Williams, Antelope Valley. There are a bunch of them, including some of different lengths. And so your option is you could block out some time to learn how to use SkySlope, or wait until you have an offer
and then stay up till 2 in the morning trying to figure out how to upload everything to SkySlope. And some of you, I've already told this, my phone stops ringing at 10 o'clock and doesn't ring again until 7 o'clock the next morning. I'm just saying, right? So at 10:30, I'm not answering SkySlope questions, right? Do you understand that? Should you understand how to use that system? Now, the My Transactions is, we use SkySlope instead of My Transactions, which is built into the Keller Williams system. I'm not gonna cover that because none of the offices represented here use that system. Price and terms, consult your buyer to arrive at the most logical offering based on the CMA, review the disclosures. Be sure, I've covered this. Some of this I'm not gonna go through because I cover it in my How to Write a Purchase Agreement. But does what the MLS says you're going to get, is that what you automatically get? If the MLS says you get the stove, does that mean you get the stove? No. In fact, what it says in the purchase agreement is that the MLS does not control what you get. It has to be in the purchase contract. Earnest money. Was it last week I was talking about this? I don't know. About the more you make as a deposit. I did that last Thursday, right? And do we want a check?
No,
Do we want to bring money to the office?
no.
No, we don't want to do that. Time for seller's acceptance. Now, there's something called a preemptive offer. Some agents, by the way, are writing in their letters, seller has requested no preemptive offers. A preemptive offer is an offer, let's say it says that we're gonna be accepting offers next Tuesday. And does that mean you can't make an offer now?
Well, what about if they do write that the seller does not want any preemptive offers?
Supposing it says in the MLS, seller does not want preemptive offers.
It's just talk to the agent.
Supposing the agent said the seller does not want preemptive offers.
Say, well, here's one, and it's their responsibility to show them any reasonable offer. And if
Is
they-
it a requirement by the law that the listing agent has to present all offers unless clearly frivolous unless in writing?
Yeah,
Is it possible the seller hasn't said anything about preemptive offers?
awesome.
That this is the listing agent's idea?
What's a
A preemptive offer, so it says we're taking offers next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And I have an offer right now, all cash. You get 6 hours to think about it. It's not Tuesday, not next Tuesday, it's today's Tuesday, right? Right. That's called a preemptive offer. So the all cash buyer that I worked with the most didn't care what the MLS said. He didn't care what the listing agent said. All cash, no contingencies. His contractor had already looked at the property, no contingencies, no appraisal contingency, no loan contingency, no contingencies, all cash. You get like 6 hours to say yes or no. By the way, a lot of times people would sell, right? They just, and because we would tell them, we're going to make another one tomorrow on another property, we're not going to be here next Tuesday. Right, that's a preemptive offer, right? Does that have to, yes, Christian?
Now, if they don't consider that offer that you made today with all cash, can you make that offer again on Tuesday?
Sure you could,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we're just bluffing, I mean, we're just telling them that, sure you could. Yeah. Sure, but you do, that's a preemptive offer. What is the normal time period, assuming we don't change it in the purchase agreement? How long does the seller have to think about our offer? 3 days. Do they need 3 days to decide if they're going to accept the offer? No. They don't need 30 minutes. Do you understand? They need like 3 minutes. Now, here's the price. Will you take it or not? Right? I mean, they don't need 3 days. If the seller's out of town, might they need more time? Right? So how would you find out about that? Talk to the listing agent, right?
Can you sell the home if the seller's out of town?
Yeah.
If they accept them.
I sold 2 homes, one seller, she was in Shanghai at the time the offers came in. Did you know they have computers in Shanghai? They do, really, they do. And no problem, drop in the signature, right? You know, you can sign on your cell phone and back it comes and we're in escrow. Right, buyer pre-approval letter, loan approval. Right, closing date, that's something to talk about. Might they want a rent back? But do they want to pay rent? No, that's something else I'll talk about. A home warranty, I believe that there ought to be a home warranty on every property, whether you pay for it, they pay for it, or the seller pays for it. Somebody should have a home warranty. Right? And I think you ought to talk about that. And by the way, if you pay for it, the one advantage is if something breaks, you sort of get credit for it. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just saying, by the way, most home warranties have what are called upgrades. And most of the upgrades are needed in order to make it an effective home warranty. Should you understand home warranties?
Yes.
Did I have somebody come in from a home warranty company? All right, I will. Special clauses or contingencies, a cover letter, your turn, buyer offer objection. So there's some scripts here. One of the things so I have, the people we were talking to last night are interested in making an offer on a home that's got issues. And because it's a probate, the seller's not gonna do anything. There's a termite report and nothing else. The seller will not do anything, there's no repairs, seller's not gonna do anything. So what I told the buyer is you need to have a contractor go with you to take a look at the property. Right? If the property is at all a fixer-upper, you need a contractor to go with you to look at the property, because the property inspection is not gonna tell you how much. Right? The property inspection is gonna say things like, there's a crack in the beam in the garage, you ought to have somebody look at it. The electrical system, the panel seems out of date, you ought to have an electrician look at it. There seems to be issues with the plumbing, we're not an expert. What licensing do you need to be a home inspector, a property inspector? Does anyone know? What is the requirement? Do you know what the education requirement is? The
Nothing.
experience requirement and the license requirements to be a home inspector. Does anybody know?
Nothing?
There are none.
I didn't think so.
There are none. There are none.
I think there's one company that does require them or has them
So
licensed.
they're not licensed, they actually get certified by going through
Yeah.
some training program, but that's not a requirement. Do you understand, if you can convince people to pay you to inspect homes, you are a home inspector. Right?
Crazy.
Right? Yeah. So would it be, and are they gonna tell you what it's gonna cost to fix stuff?
No.
No. Do they sound like experts to you? No, they're not experts. So how about a general contractor? Are we getting warmer now?
Yeah.
Right? Is this somebody who's in the habit of telling you what it's gonna cost to fix stuff?
Oh, yeah.
That's what they do for a living, isn't that right? They bid out work. So would it cost something to have a contractor take a look at the house? Hundreds of dollars, right? Depending on how much work you've given them in the past, right? If every time you flip a house you use the same contractor, they'll go with you. The contractor from my cash buyer didn't charge him to do it because he knew he was gonna do all the work, right? You understand? But if you just call up a contractor and say, I'd like you to come look at a house, you should be prepared to part with hundreds of dollars. Right?
No free estimates, huh?
Well, no, they're not, no. Generally speaking, no, right? Either there's work that they're going to do, or they're gonna wanna be paid for doing it. Isn't that right? Yeah, they're gonna wanna be paid for doing it, but now you have an estimate as to what it's gonna cost. Which puts you in do you understand if it's a fixer-upper, you can't know what to bid without having a contractor look at it. Right? Somebody has to say that much, this much for the bedroom, for the bathroom, this much for the
plumbing this much. Right, that's what you need. Call the listing agent immediately, let them know an offer is coming. This is the loop thing, we don't need to worry about that. Request or apply the shortest amount of time your market will allow. If there's a counter offer, I'm gonna do a class on counter offers, because I keep seeing them. I actually have a checklist I have to dig up about what to look for in counter offers. We'll talk about that in another one. There's some scripts, representing the seller. So one of the things that I used to do, if there were multiple offers, I'd make a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet would have price, deposit, down payment, other contingencies, yes or no, appraisal, yes or no. You know, I would have all that laid out. Gather information, present the offer to the client, and respond. By the way, what else could we do? So this is gathering information about the buyer. Notice these are the things they're suggesting that the listing agent do with the seller. How long, question, so now this assumes, if I have 10 offers, I am not asking you questions. Right, do you understand? I'm just not going to, I'm not going to ask, I don't have time to ask you questions. I don't want to ask you questions. But if I only have one, these are some of the things I might want to know. And basically this would be in the offer, right, most of this stuff. I really don't care about a lot of these things, right? If they're not in your letter, I probably don't care about them. What I care most about is the two things. What are the two things that cause escrows not to close?
Time.
Two
Contingencies.
contingencies. There's two contingencies that cause escrow not to close. Loan contingency, and the other one is repairs. Right? Those are the two contingencies that cause escrows not to close. What I'm concerned about as a listing agent is that the escrow close. Because I don't want to put it back. I don't want to do open house. I do not want to do open houses again. Right? I don't want to go through this again. I don't want to. Right? I really don't. So would it help if your loan agent was willing to call the listing agent up and talk to the listing agent? Would it be helpful if your loan agent was from a company that the listing agent might have heard of before? If your agent, I went on this rant at that home buying seminar, was from, if the buyer found some company on the internet that no one's ever heard of before, and that's the loan approval letter, something that they printed out from a web address. You understand, is if I have multiple offers, I'm putting them in piles. Right? There's a pile that we don't really want to look at. Right? Then there's sort of a maybe pile, and then there's these are the good ones pile. Right? And you want your offer in the good ones pile. And if I've heard of the loan agent, if I know the loan agent, if I've heard of the lender, I know the lender. If the lender talks to me, by the way, I get a loan approval letter, I've called the lender to ask them, and they'll say, who? What are you talking about? What are those names again? They have no idea who I'm calling about. How does that make me feel as the listing agent?
No way, no.
Not very good, right? So I move it to another pile. I say, oh, that's nice. You don't even know who these people are. Great, just move it to the other pile, right? Would it be better if your loan agent called me up and said, hey, how you doing? Just want you to know what I've done with this file so far. Would that help? Right? Yes.
Say it was a loan broker, do you contact the loan broker who maybe got the loan through Wells Fargo, or do you go directly to Wells
No,
Fargo?
you can't go directly to Wells Fargo. You talk to the loan broker. Wells Fargo is not going to talk to you. That's a wholesale department. They don't talk to people. They don't talk to people. All right. So, but yes, question.
How long does it usually take to get an approval letter that's been through underwriting?
Underwriting takes a couple of weeks. All right. So, checklist. Make sure. I don't know how much of this. Notice we're pounding on the same nails right now. I wanted, if I represent the seller, I'll tell you how to make sure this closes.
if I represent the seller, I would like to have a property inspection, a chimney inspection, a roof inspection, a termite inspection. I want to have everything, and I want to have it in a package to give to people before they make an offer, and I want them to sign off on the package. Because I don't like surprises. Right? And if I don't do those things, then could be surprises. Right? So, by the way, if you're the real estate agent, if you're the listing agent, should you have a practiced explanation as to why the price that it's listed for is a good price?
Yes.
Should you have comps that you could share with a buyer? How would you communicate those? By the way, now, some of you have seen my listing in Dearborn, and Roberta hasn't said anything yet, but much of what I'm talking about is not on my listing in Dearborn, right? It's true, right? And the reason is that the seller, I'm dealing with a very difficult seller, which means a real estate agent, right? So the seller of the listing in Dearborn is a friend of mine. I'm sort of doing this as a favor, not kidding. And did Christine come by when you were there? If you meet her, you will find she isn't interested in your opinion about anything. And she's not that interested in mine either. And so she's doing what she's doing, right? So she opened escrow without me. She's decided what report she's going to have. I'm doing this as a favor, right? But if it were my listing, I mean, it really isn't my listing, right? My name's on the sign and my name's on the MLS, but some of you you'll meet her at some point. So I would have a binder in the house that had the CMA in it, as well as all the disclosures for people to look at. I would include it in a package that the buyer would get, that the buyer's agent would get, if they were going to write an offer. Right? Do you understand? Rather than having you run a CMA, which you might not understand why Radco is priced the way it is, I would tell you why it's priced the way it is. Right? And I would give you comps that you could share with the buyer. You think that there are a lot of agents that represent buyers that don't know how to do a CMA very well, don't understand, and if I gave them a CMA, they would just show it to the buyer.
Yeah.
Right? There's probably a lot of them like that. Right? So if I'm the listing agent, I want to make this as dummy proof for the buyer's agent as possible, including having my own CMA.
When you talk about the packet, is that sent just electronically as an attachment to an email?
Yes, what I would do, and again, I'm not doing this one, but SkySlope, I believe, has the ability to do this. The Keller Williams listing system has the ability to do this. I used to create a folder in Google Docs with all the PDFs, and I would take the link to the folder, and I made a form using a program called Wufoo. And what Wufoo does is it makes them fill out a form before they're going to get this, and I ask for their name and their phone number and their email address and what company they work at. There's a place for them to ask me questions, and then when they hit submit, the Wufoo sends them a link where the disclosures are. And then I can download this. It's in a comma separated value file, so I can call or send emails to, let's say there's a price reduction. I can pull up all the emails of all the people that have ever downloaded anything and email them and say, hey, there's been a price reduction. Right? But I believe that SkySlope also has a place where we can upload files and get a link. And in the MLS, there's a place to put a link. And they'll tell us they have to register in order to get it. I just like that other system because it's really easy for me to copy the emails and drop them into a email client and send everybody an email. Right? When you get a listing, we'll talk about that. What else? We're not gonna practice presenting, but we're practicing writing offers and presenting offers. We don't present offers very much anymore. In the old days, we used to actually you would go with your offer to meet the seller and the listing agent.
The banks killed that in 2008, 2009, and 2010. Right, there were so many REOs, and the banks didn't want to meet anybody. So we got out of the habit of doing that. Right? If you push, you might still be able to present the offer in person. Right?
But every house that I held open, the owner wanted the offers presented in person.
They wanted it in person.
She wanted them in person because the house was very sentimental to her and she wanted to see each and every offer.
That's right. Well, see, I'm glad to hear that it's not a lost art. And by the way, would it be good for you to show up in time, look professional, and know what you're doing? Yeah. Write that down. Show up on time. Look professional. Know what I'm doing. Right. And by the way, if we want to do that, we could do a practice once we're done with all this. Is writing an offer. Would you present an offer to another agent? Does that sound like fun? I'll put that on my Thursday list of things to do. Right. Practice. How would you explain your offer to somebody? By the way, a tip is you'd have a summary sheet. All right. So, what else? Was that enough? Was that good enough? Let me see if anybody joined us. Ah, Silver did. How you doing, Silver? Although you didn't say anything about it. All right. Was that enough? So, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, San Carlos, I'm going to send everybody an email with the webinar link. I'm going to talk about eEdge. This is people want me to talk about eEdge. I don't know why, but they do. And then Thursday, we're going to work on explaining the real estate purchase agreement to ourselves and to others. What?
Codes, the Keller Williams codes, I missed in the beginning. Do you have an email? Did you
I
say?
will. I'm going to send that in the email. All right? For $5. All right, cool.
Okay.